Boxingego here. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon on the top of your screen to get notified when the latest new content drops. What up, fight world? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button, also subscribe to the channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. If you want to become part of the gang notification gang, please hit the bell icon. Shout out to the super chats, channel donations, the Venmo, and the Patreon family. We are working. Now, Keith Thurman, he was there for fight week for the Showtime triple header that was on Saturday, and he was at the podium there. They gave him a microphone, and he brought us something interesting. I got to talk about this too. Keith Thurman says, and I'm going to paraphrase, Keith Thurman was asked about fighting a newbie to the 147-pound division, Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford was undisputed at 140. He racked up some bodies. And Keith Thurman basically says a fight with Terence Crawford, he has to do something first. He has to, the guys he beat are 140 pounders or less, and he hasn't whacked no welterweights. That's basically what he said. He said he's got a lot of respect for the way he's dominated 140. He said what really put me on notice was the Gamboa fight. It was semi-competitive, but Gamboa likes to have his hands down, and Crawford took over and ended up stopping Gamboa, but Gamboa was a smaller guy. He also goes on to say that he's whacked up a lot of people, but he hasn't whacked up a welterweight. So he says Crawford needs to become relevant to fight one of us, meaning like him or Errol Spence, one of the champions, like become a champion, fight someone in the top 10. And I just want to give my thoughts. I disagree with Thurman, and like I said, I'm not trying to go in on Thurman in the last couple of days, but I don't like the stuff he's saying because it doesn't look like the same energy that he had when he was the same dude. Because look at it like this, like what he's demanding is almost, he was doing the same thing. I was at Terence Crawford's last fight, and Crawford, for the Crawford and Dongo, at the press conference, it was a final presser. I have the video. Maybe I'll attach it to this video. He called out Keith Thurman. He says, I'm moving up most likely if I get best in Dongo, become undisputed at 140, and I would like to fight a guy like Keith Thurman. Boom. That's what he said. That's what Crawford said out of his own mouth, not Todd DeBow or Bob Arum. He said that. Crawford said that, right? So you're already being called out by him, and now you're saying he has to become relevant. But the thing is, he was the man in the previous division beneath you, and he was undisputed, something that hasn't been done since probably Jermaine Taylor or Bernard Hopkins, so a while ago when they did it. You know what I'm saying? So to me, I feel like, I understand if it's just to anybody coming from 140, you know what I mean? Like, let's say Victor Postal or something, you know what I mean? Because he lost to Crawford. If he came up and immediately won the title, that wouldn't make sense. But Crawford annihilated a whole division and proved himself to be the best person at 140 with all the belts. So I think that situation is a little bit different. Just like you look at other past greats, I tell you guys, I'm very consistent. The whole daring to be great, like Amir Khan jumping up to fight Canelo, Kell Brook jumping up to fight Golovkin. The reason I had a problem with those fighters moving up all that weight, daring to, quote unquote, daring to be great, it was they were going up double digit 10 to 13 pounds, which is already one thing, without acclimating. And two, Amir Khan and Kell Brook both, when they moved up to fight Canelo, when Brook moved up to fight Golovkin, they hadn't established themselves as the quintessential #1 welterweight. In fact, Kell Brook, his best work was against Sean Porter, and he won, I think, a split decision. And then he started fighting. He got stabbed and stuff. Then he started fighting a bunch of people we knew he was going to beat. Jojo Dan and Frankie Gavin, Kevin Bezier. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you jump up and fight Golovkin. That's not good preparation. Had Kell Brook beaten Errol Spence or Keith Thurman or both of them or something like that, Danny Garcia, and then he moved up to fight Golovkin, then it'd be slightly different. Same thing with Amir Khan. Amir Khan was not even looking great versus Chris Algieri at 147. Looked good against Collazo, looked good against Devin Alexander before that, but his most recent fight before Canelo was Chris Algieri, and Chris Algieri kind of rocked him, and Chris Algieri is coming off a Pacquiao loss in which he was knocked down like 6 times, right? And he didn't, you know, he clearly lost, got shut out by Pacquiao, and then Pacquiao went on to do whatever, and Algieri moved up in weight from a catchweight with Pacquiao to give Amir Khan a very tough fight. You know what I'm saying? Then he moved up. So that's the difference. But here with Crawford, that's not the same scenario. Crawford was the man. Without us, if you're undisputed, you're the man. There's nothing anyone. There's other great fighters. You can say Broner's a good fighter, Mikey Garcia, but clearly Crawford was the man. He had all the belts. You know what I'm saying? And he went through champions and made it look easy. And Olympians like Felix Diaz, who had even fought at 47 and had a good victory with Sammy Vasquez, you know what I mean? Gave Lamont Peterson, who's now fighting Errol Spence, a very tough fight. And some people argue Felix Diaz won. So Crawford's situation is completely different. So this is why me personally, because I'm very consistent, why I don't agree with Keith Thurman, what he's saying, because you're saying he has to become relevant. I think him being undisputed in the division below you made him relevant, right? You look at Floyd Mayweather. I believe his first fight at like 35, I knew it was at the weight. I'm not, don't quote me on the actual weight, but let's say 35 was DeMarcus Corley, right? That was a tough fight, but he was already the man in the previous division, so he moved up again. You know what I'm saying? Just like Vasyl Lomachenko. He beat Gary Russell, lost to Salido, but he had, you know what I mean, got some good momentum, and then he got a title shot immediately because he was clearly the best featherweight. So he moved up and fought Rocky Martinez and knocked him out. You know what I'm saying? So usually, and this is why I totally disagree with Keith Thurman, is usually if you establish yourself as pretty much the end-all be-all or the best in the previous division, when you move up, that's taken into consideration. Even the sanctioning bodies do this. You know what I'm saying? Like when Jermall Charlo moved up, he had no middleweight fights, but the WBC put him at number 2, and then they put him in an eliminator with Jorge Sebastian Hyland. So they gave him a generous ranking because he was an undefeated, Lions only, and he had just knocked out Julian J. Rock Williams at 54. So when he was moving up, you kind of carry that momentum. And this happens all the time with the sanctioning bodies, right? And the other example I could give you is Andre Ward. Andre Ward was the king at 168. Super middleweight, everyone knew he was good. You know what I mean? So Kovalev probably was down to fight him immediately, but Ward, being a smart veteran, he allowed himself time to acclimate. He's like, give me 2 fights and then I'll fight Kovalev in the 3rd fight as part of this HBO multi-fight deal. Took a stern test against Sullivan Barrera. You know what I mean? Barrera didn't be like, oh, I'm #1 mandatory for Kovalev, so Ward has to make himself relevant. Everybody knew who Ward was. He was already relevant, right? He beat Sullivan Barrera, took a tune-up with Alexander Brand, and then he fought Kovalev. You know what I mean? Boom. So I really don't care for how Thurman is talking recently. It just seems like, who do you want to fight? Because like, even see, this is where words can jam you up a bit, because even using Thurman's rationale of thinking, you're saying Crawford has to go through these hoops, even though he was just undisputed in the division below, and everybody knows who Crawford is. And you even hear in the interview that another reporter jumped in and he's like, oh, you're talking about him. That kind of makes him relevant, right? But even though we all know who Terence Crawford is and he's a good skill fighter, looks like he has the frame, skill set, style, experience, amateur and pro to move up and be successful, Thurman's saying, hey, he got to do this and he has to become a champion or fight someone in the top 10. So even if you agree with that, this is how people get jammed up with words. And I'm trying to tell you, even if you agree with that sentiment from Keith Thurman, then what's the deal with Errol Spence? Because he's already an established welterweight. He's been fighting at welterweight. He's a big welterweight, and he's the IBF champion. And even that fight, it looks like Keith Thurman hasn't really been gung-ho to establish, like, hey, give me a tune-up, give me 2 tune-ups, 3rd fight, I'll fight Errol Spence, no problem. So, you know what I'm saying? Either way, it is looking kind of shaky, baby, because Keith Thurman is, even if you want to play the become relevant Terence Crawford card, you did that to Errol Spence Jr. before he became a champion, but now he's a champion, so there's really no reason to not fight him. You know what I'm saying? And instead, Thurman's talking about rematching Sean Porter or Danny Garcia, guys he's already beat. So to me, it's seeming kind of weird, just the verbiage and the choice of words from Keith Thurman. You know what I mean? I never really seen that, where a person is the champion and the man at a division, and then they move up and, oh, you got to do, like, look at Shane Mosley. Shane Mosley was running through lightweights. We knew he was a good fighter, and he was from LA, Pomona or wherever, and Oscar De La Hoya is from East LA. So De La Hoya fought him. De La Hoya was a cash cow. He didn't have to fight Shane Mosley, but he did, and he lost to Shane Mosley. But Shane Mosley jumped up in weight, but he was the man. Like, everyone knew who Mosley was. He was knocking out lightweights, so he moved up, and they made the fight. And I could think of several examples of, like I said, Lomachenko, where based on how he'd been looking, you kind of give him credit for the new division, and so far so good. You know what I mean? So far so good. Ever since he moved up to 130, he ain't lost. He ain't lost in Salido. So to me, you kind of give people that are on the pound for pound list that are moving up, you kind of give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, okay, they were exceptional fighters in this past division. You know what I mean? And or they're undefeated or whatever the situation, like Ward and Terence Crawford. So I don't know. I don't think you have to. I don't believe you have to start fresh and make yourself relevant all over again. You know what I mean? And like I said, the only way I would say that where that really makes sense to me is if you're not established as pretty much the best of your previous division and you're moving up. Yeah, okay, you're gonna have to work for a title shot. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know. I just don't get it. Like even someone like Badu Jack. Badu Jack, he was one of the best at 168. I thought he beat James DeGale. So even though he got stopped, he had a lot of good momentum. Beat George Groves. He beat Anthony Durrell. And in my opinion, he beat James DeGale, but they said it was a draw. So when he moved up to 175, he was able to get a title shot with Nathan Cleverly in his very first fight, and he knocked him out. You know what I'm saying? Nathan Cleverly was not like, oh, he ain't done shit at 175, so Badu Jack has to fight somebody to become relevant. He challenged, and he challenged for the title in his first fight. You know what I'm saying? So I totally disagree with what Keith Thurman is saying, because like I said, I just gave you several examples. Badu Jack is a recent example. First, based on him proving his worth after his knockout and beating Durrell's and beating George Groves, and in my opinion, really beating James DeGale, but they said it was a draw. Right? When he moved up, naturally, he's worthy of a title shot, right? And now he might be able to fight Adonis Stevenson in 2018. That's kind of how it works. So I think you kind of carry your progress over. It's just like a job. Even if I didn't work for this particular company, if I have a lot of similar experience, then I'll probably be able to transition well and learn the new systems at the new job relatively easy. It's not like I have no job experience. You know what I'm saying? So I don't agree with that. I think Terence Crawford, we all realize, even Keith Thurman, because he's kind of complimenting, but he's also like shooting him down a little bit. But he's acknowledging that he's a good fighter and he understands that people have him. And actually, people probably, I would say more people probably have Terence Crawford ranked higher on the pound for pound list than Keith Thurman, whether you agree with that or not. But from the list that I've seen from boxing imprints, more people probably have Crawford ranked higher on the pound for pound list. So I don't believe in this whole, it just seems like kind of an excuse to not fight him. You know what I mean? He called you out. And the other thing I don't understand about some of these fighters is like, he called you out, Crawford called you out, right? And he's at a disadvantage technically because he's the one that's moving up in weight. So if it's easy work and he hasn't proven himself, why wouldn't you want to get him before he does get settled in and fills out and gets of the weight? You know what I'm saying? That doesn't make sense. Like, picture Canelo versus Golovkin. Imagine if Canelo had 3 fights. He made for a very tough fight for Golovkin, and Golovkin didn't look as dominant as he's looked versus lesser competition. So imagine if Canelo had 3 tune-up fights and then fought Golovkin. He already fought him to a draw in really his first fight at the flat 160. You know what I'm saying? So Terence Crawford's calling you out now. Why wouldn't you want to take advantage of that? Knock him out, you know what I mean? If you can do it, knock him out while he hasn't acclimated to the division, because he's calling you out. It's kind of like Erickson Lubin. Erickson Lubin was a mandatory and he was calling out Charlo and said he was a paper champ. So why don't you prove and exploit that? And the other thing is, like I said, Terence Crawford is a respected name. So if Keith Thurman beats him, you'll get a lot of credit, even though he's coming from 140. So I don't agree with this whole narrative of become relevant first and you got to do all this. And like I said, even if you do believe that, the reason it sounds shaky is because Errol Spence has already proven himself at welterweight and he's a champion. And there's still, I haven't heard a conclusive, definitive, like, yeah, I'll fight Errol Spence by the end of 2018. No questions asked. Send the contract. You know what I'm saying? So let me know how you interpret it. I think Terence Crawford, based on what he's accomplished, even at 140, even though it's the division below, I think he's already proved his legitimacy and his relevancy as a fighter in general. And I've never really seen that where you don't get the respect and you're moving up. You know what I'm saying? Like you're moving up. Like I said, Andre Ward was the man at 168, pretty much had proven that he's the best at 168. So naturally, when he moves up, you kind of give him credit, and he was even the favorite to beat guys like Kovalev and Sullivan Barrera, even though he was newer to the division. So I think Crawford, some people would probably even favor him to beat top welterweights. Just my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Make sure you smash the like button. As always, hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video is Ego signing off.
Where do you think you deserve to be in the rankings?
Number one. Number one, it's nothing else to be discussed about. It's number one.
All right, and go ahead. Lastly, let me ask you this, because I know this is something that the fans are wondering. Your goal was to unify all the belts at 140. That was your goal in this division, why you stayed here, although people have asked you about moving up to welterweight 147. You do that on Saturday night. Is this your last fight at 140?
Well, we don't know yet. Like I tell everybody, we at 140 now, and this is where we doing our business at. And Brian McIntyre and Saul Dieguez and Red Spikes and Cameron Duncan, them my managers and my coaches and Top Rank, my promoters, what's best for my career. That's where we're gonna go.
All right, well, first things first is, right here.
This one's for Crawford. In your last outing, you called out Keith Thurman, and Keith Thurman is one of the bigger welterweights in the division. So what do you see? Is there anything beside the two belts that you see in Thurman that interests you?
He's the number one guy in the welterweight division. So why take 1, 2, or 3, or 4 when I go to welterweight? I want the number one guy at welterweight.
So you want to go for a title shot if you move up right away?
Right away.
Okay. What's your question?
So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxingego, the future of boxing.